We're looking for consistency, a relative point of impact consistency. We're not looking for the fastest load. We're not looking for whatever other metric you want to talk about. That's why we're looking for sequential charge weights that hit in the same place and relatively in the center of the ag, because we want something that when you take it out from time to time, it hits in the same place. The groups are going to be different. If you've shot for any length of time, you better know that you can take the same load out many times, and the groups are going to be a different size every time you go out. Sometimes they'll be the same, maybe 2 trips in a row, and the third time you go out, it shoots big. That doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater and get rid of that load. It just, you had a bad day, whatever. It was on a different end of the bell curve that day, or you pulled a shot or whatever. Like, don't get stirred up into that. Don't get sucked into that where you have one bad group and you're like, oh, well, this load's no good. Doesn't mean anything. What you want is, when you take it out from time to time, it hits in the same place. Alright, now we got the 7 PRC out. We're going to be testing our sweet spots up against some factory ammo. We have our 160 grain Hornady CX in the Outfitter line, which we think is the best factory ammo option available for that cartridge. And then we're also going to be testing the fabled 175 grain ELDX Precision Hunter ammo that everybody's been up in arms about because of the velocity not being anywhere near the what's on the box. So at the beginning of the series, in the first video, I think we were guesstimating it's going to be somewhere around like 2880. This barrel is broke in. I scrubbed the hell out of it recently, but it is what I would call broke in. So we should get a fair shake on what the velocity average is. We're also shooting for groups, and we're going to see how these two offerings compare to our sweet spots, where they currently sit, our sweet spot loads. And then we're also trying to get zeros, so that way we know where we're at when we want to stretch these out further. So I think we're going to start with the Outfitter ammo, the 160 CX, and see how it does. .3014 on the velocity. Box says 3000, so that's good. 3014. We'll see how the 175 ELDX Precision Hunter does. Wow. 3021. Okay. I don't know if that was a fluke or this is a newer lot and they got the velocity thing figured out. Shoot another one, make sure that wasn't an accident. $29.97. Looks like they got it back in order, guys. I don't know if they changed the powder or went back to the original powder or what, but 30.21, and that last one was 29.97. So that's a good thing. We'll see how it groups. Hey guys, Tim with Little Crow Gunworks. Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for your patience. It's been a long time to get these videos out. I've just been testing and doing a lot of shooting with all the guns, and then I'm compiling the data and trying to figure out how I want to present it and how much to present in each video, so these things aren't 4 hours long a piece. So I think we'll start out by, well, as always, I want to say thank you to our viewers and subscribers and those of you that are following this along. I really appreciate your support. And then as far as what's been going on in the comments, I guess we'll address that once we start getting into the sweet spots here. But I think what I want to do here to kind of increase the cadence of these videos is I'm going to do kind of a showcase on each of the rifles. So we'll go into the particulars of each build so you guys can see that, go through some photos, talk about the specs and the parts used in each rifle, and then subsequently how those sweet spots shot that we found in the previous video where we did the ladder tests, just the one-shot ladder tests, to kind of explore different powders and get an idea of where we should be looking. So I think to start with, we will, well, I guess I probably should mention what you saw in the beginning clip there at the range. The Precision Hunter ammo, the 175 ELDX Precision Hunter ammo. I don't know, truth be told, I don't know if that's one of the original lots. I mean, we ordered some right away as soon as it became available, and then we subsequently ordered more later. And I don't know if that, what I was testing, I just happened to grab the original lot, or if that's new stuff or what. I'm guessing we have some of the ammo that guys were complaining about, that the velocity was seriously reduced, but the stuff that I tested, the velocity was, you know, kind of right where it should be, approximately where the box has it. So I just shot that recently, so that little part of the intro video I filmed recently, that wasn't when I shot the original sweet spots, that was later. But I wanted you guys to kind of see that and see my live reaction to that. So I think what we'll start with is going into the specs of the rifle, and talk about the details of that and why we did what we did with that. So I'm gonna get my screen recording fired up here. You noticing this is a timber wolf I caught on my trail camera by my deer stand a few years ago. Get this fired up here. 3, 2, 1, and I think we're live. All right, so start out with the 7 PRC. Oh, what a beauty. What do we have here? So this is what Dale and I are calling our blueprint for a long-range hunting rifle. You know, we're a full custom rifle builder, so we can make you a rifle out of pretty much whatever you want. We prefer to work with modern components rather than, you know, antiquated stuff. It adds problems, and the end result is less than ideal usually. So we like to work with modern, currently in production parts. And of those parts, if we're talking long range precision hunting rifles, this is what we prefer to build. You know, we can choose from any components, we can get parts from anybody, and this is what we picked. And there's a reason for everything. So what we were after was we're calling this our blueprint, or our flagship type rifle, where this is what we want to build. Why? Well, there's certain things that go into a long-range rifle that produce good results and consistent results, and some of them are in the feature set. So like this particular stock that we chose is made by AG Composites. It happens to be made of carbon fiber to help save some weight. There's a lot of different companies that make carbon fiber stocks. They're all great. AG we've had good experience with. Their pricing is reasonable compared to other carbon fiber stocks on the market. You know, they're right in there with everybody else. Their lead times are decent. They're on the longer side compared to some of the other companies. I guess they're kind of in the middle. I think they're a bit faster than a Manners, but not quite as fast as a Macmillan. They are on time. You know, what they tell you is their lead time. We've had everyone they've told us a lead time. It's been right on. So, but the particular model we chose, you know, they offer a bunch of different models. The one we chose is this happens to be the adjustable chalk branch. They have an adjustable and a non-adjustable version. This one happens to be the adjustable. If you choose the non-adjustable and get rid of that adjustable cheek riser, you're going to save about 9 ounces. So I guess I should talk about that. This rifle, as pictured, not with right now on the picture, it's hooked up to our new Thoroughfare lightweight carbon fiber tripod. That's like a hunting tripod that we came out with recently. Really lightweight, really small form factor. I'll be doing some videos on that, and as you can see, it can go all the way from a prone shooting position all the way to standing and everywhere in between. Really lightweight. Features our 40 millimeter ball mount and on and on. But without the tripod, I don't have the Night Force scope caps on there, but with the scope caps and without the tripod, that rifle is 10 pounds, 11 and a half ounces. My mom and my daughter just got home. My daughter's noisy. So again, 10 pounds, 11 and a half ounces as pictured if the scope caps were on it, and no tripod, no sling. Right now I can tell a lot of guys are thinking 10 pounds, 11 ounces, that's heavy. Well, for an accurate long-range hunting rifle, that's not heavy. That's about as light as I would want for any Magnum cartridge. You know, when you guys are shooting long range, the gun's got to be controllable, which is why we want a little extra weight, which is why we want a muzzle brake. We don't want the gun jumping around, because if you're hunting by yourself, you need to be able to see what's going on. And if you've got some lightweight gun without a muzzle brake and it's not designed to track straight, which I'll go into in a second, you pull the trigger, that gun's jumping all over the place and you can't see what's going on. And if the animal isn't laying there dead, and you can't see like a blood spot on the animal, you don't know if you hit it or not. So we want something controllable so you can actually see what's going on. And part of that is, you know, the reason we chose this model is we feel like it's set up ideally for hunting, for shooting prone, being that it has 2 flat spots on the bottom end of the buttstock there. You see one of them sitting on the beanbag, and then the other one there's like a little pocket for a beanbag. Well, both of those spots they have a slight slope to them, but they're relatively flat. And what that does is it allows the rifle to track straight under recoil. You know, a lot of your stereotypical sporter type stock has like a really sloped angle on the bottom of the stock usually. When you shoot that type of stock prone and you try to put a sandbag underneath it, as soon as you pull the trigger and the gun recoils, it slides down the bag. Well, if it slides down the bag, the muzzle comes up violently, especially if you don't have a muzzle brake. So usually a typical sporter type Magnum rifle with that sloped stock and no muzzle brake, you're shooting prone. Doesn't matter how well you hold on to the gun, you pull the trigger, you're looking at the clouds. You know, that's, to me, that is useless with a capital U if you're trying to shoot long range, especially a game where you need to be able to see what's going on. If you're shooting at a steel target, by the time you get the scope off the clouds and back on the target, oh yeah, you can see your impact on the steel. Well, that's great, but animals don't leave black marks on a white background when you shoot them, so you need to see what's going on. So with this stock, those flats allow that gun, instead of tilting like this between the flat part of the toe of the stock and the muzzle brake, the gun tracks like a sewing machine. It tracks nice and straight, which if you look at like the F-class guys, the 1,000-yard F-class competitors, the way they design their guns, just like this. The fore end's flat, the bottom of the butt stock is flat. They want that thing to run like a sewing machine, perfectly back and forth, so the gun's not moving around. They can see what's going on, and it's easy to get a second follow-up shot without having to screw around with the gun and get the thing back in order. You know, they want to be able to rip them without the gun jumping around. Well, when you're hunting, it should be the same way. You rip the first one, and you better be ready with the second one in case you need to send it. Well, if that gun's jumping all over the place and it's pogo sticking on the bipod, you're not getting a second shot, or if you are, it's going to be sloppy and hasty. So that a stock with that type of design, it doesn't have to be an AG, but we'd prefer to put you into something with that type of a design where it's flat on the bottom of the buttstock, and having the adjustable cheek riser is helpful. I mean, that's a necessity for some guys. If you opt to go without it, again, you're going to save 9 ounces, but then you kind of have to put a premium on getting the scope as low as you can, so that way you get a good cheek weld and a good sight picture through the scope. The rings we have on here, the Night Force does have their Night Force ultralight rings. They do have one size shorter, so we could get the scope a little bit closer to the barrel. We didn't put a precedent on that for this particular one because it has an adjustable cheek riser, so getting it super tight to the barrel wasn't a priority. So that's why we designed it the way we did. Now, everything after that is kind of creature comforts and value based, and trying to save weight where you can, and we'll go through that part by part. So we got the AG Composites adjustable chalk branch stock. This happens to be their carbon sagebrush camo, which is my favorite color. That's why we picked it. It fits for a hunting stock, and I really like it. And you gotta pick something and throw it at the wall and see what sticks, because they have 60 different color choices or something. So we just picked one. Going forward from the buttstock, we have the action. We chose a Zermatt Arms Origin in their obviously long action Magnum. It's a stainless action. They do make it in titanium. If you wanted titanium, I think that saves another 11 ounces approximately. This action we have with the extended spiral bolt handle, which we really like. It's their biggest bolt handle. Some guys might think it's a little big, might be prone to hook on stuff. Well, if you're hunting, a lot of times you have gloves on, so it's easier to get a hold of that bigger bolt handle if you have gloves on. And partially another reason why we selected the trigger we did with that flat shoe is it gives you more room to get your finger in there if it's got a glove on it. So going back to the titanium action, we can build your rifle with a titanium action. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say we don't recommend it, but there's trade-offs. Just like everything in life, there's trade-offs. So you go to titanium, you save 11 ounces. Hey, all right, for the lightweight crowd, guys are like, oh, I want to save weight. I got that 10.5 pound gun's too heavy. We got to get some weight off of that thing. Well, the trade-off is they're a lot more money, a lot more, like almost double. And I don't know if for anybody that's ever played with a titanium action, I don't care who makes it, they're sticky. So they're not going to be as smooth as a stainless action. And it doesn't matter if you Cerakote it or whatever coating you put on it. When you run the bolt forward, it's kind of like grabby and sticky, and it's never going to be as smooth as a nitrided stainless action, a Cerakoted stainless action, a DLC coated stainless action. Those things are depending on who makes it, but the origins are smooth too. But some of those, if it's stainless, whether it's nitrided, DLC, or Cerakote, they can be like glass, just crazy smooth. Where titanium, doesn't matter what you do to it. I don't know why, but it's
sticky and grabby, and they're not nearly as smooth as any stainless action. So we'll build you one if that's what you want, but you know, trade-offs. You gotta understand that, like, you're giving up, you're gaining a lighter action, you know, so you're losing some weight, but you're also, it's not gonna be as smooth. So just know that. So that's the action. Why the Zermatt origin? Bang for the buck, I guess. There's things about it we really like. We like the ability to have multiple different bolt handles. We like the fact that you can change the bolt head, you know, the actual head of the bolt. So if you want a Magnum and you burn out that barrel and you decide you want to go down to, like, say you start with a 28 Nosler, you shoot that up, you decide it's too much and you want to go down to like a 280 Ackley, you can just change the bolt head. You don't need a whole new action. You can just get a standard bolt head, and now you can go down to a 280. Control round feed, which we think is really important for a hunting rifle, because it virtually eliminates the ability for you to accidentally double feed. Like if you start pushing the bolt forward and you're not sure if it grabbed a shell or not, and then you pull it back and push it again. Well, if you have a push feed action, like a Remington 700, or, you know, there's a lot of aftermarket actions that are push feed. If you push the bolt forward and it knocks a round out of the magazine and starts it into the barrel, and then you pull the bolt back and push again, you're going to get another round. And now it's going to jam two up in there, and you're sitting there farting around while your animal's running away. So having a control round feed means that once it starts to push it out of the magazine up into the barrel, so if it jumps out of the magazine, the bolt has a hold of it. So if you aren't sure whether or not you got a round and you pull it back, it's going to hit these actions also have a manual ejector. It's going to hit the manual ejector, and it's going to send that loaded round off into Never Never Land. Well, you lost that round, but you're not going to double feed. So the next time you push it forward, you're going to get a second round. So we like control round feed for hunting rifles. What else? So bang for the buck. Weight, you know, they're right in there with the weight of all the other stainless actions on the market. There's some that are lighter, that they take a lot of material out of it to try to make them light, but the weight's reasonable, the price is reasonable, they're nitride coated, they're plenty smooth, changeable bolt heads, changeable bolt handles also. We have a great relationship with them. Their lead times are very reasonable, like just everything. They make a great action. So there's a lot of good actions out there. We like this one. So that, and we've had really good luck with guns going together. They go together really well. This action happens to come with a 20 minute of angle canted base, standard. What else do we have here? So the bottom metal is Hawkins Precision. It's their Hunter bottom metal. It's M5 cutout, and we're using their Hunter magazine. You can see it's like a low profile magazine. I suppose I can click through some pictures here while we're talking. So you see it's kind of a low profile magazine. For magnums, it's a 3-round magazine. I think for the 280 it holds 4. So we like it. It's a detachable magazine that's low profile. And then the trigger I already talked about. We ended up going with a Trigger Tech Special, which I think are adjustable from 1 pound up to 3.5 pounds, I believe. I think this is currently set at 1.5 pounds. And Trigger Techs are nice because you can adjust them externally, where you just take the Allen key that they provide and you can go right up through the trigger guard here and find the little nut in there, and it's like click adjustable. So I think each click is like it's approximately 1/4 pound. So you can adjust them from the outside. So we talked about bottom metal, magazine, trigger. What else? Oh, the rings. Okay, so the rings we chose are Night Force ultralight rings. I think these are highs, I believe, and then the mediums would get you a little bit, get the this scope a little bit closer to the barrel. Depending on what scope you pick, obviously, that's going to dictate what height rings you need. I think this is it's a NX8 4-32 by 50 millimeter objective, so 50 out here on the end. If you went with a 56, you'd probably require these high rings, and that'd be as close as you can get to the barrel. So you got to be conscious of that when you're making your selection, that you don't overscope it and then, you know, like if you pick a scope with a 56 millimeter objective and then you choose to not have the adjustable cheek riser, the comb's going to be down here on your jaw, and you're not going to be able to have any kind of cheek weld, which some guys can shoot well like that, but a lot of guys, that's a problem. They want to get their face right down on the comb. So we chose the Night Force, again, the Night Force NX8 4-32 by 50. These NX8s are kind of their answer to a hunting scope. You know, Night Force makes a lot of tactical, heavy duty optics. Their NX8 line is like their hunting line, where I think they probably just reduced the tube thickness to take a little weight out of it, and maybe lightened up the erector assembly a little bit to try to take some weight out of it, because they're not super light. They're still like 28 to 30 ounces, which isn't light. It's not as light as like a Leupold, but it's not nearly as heavy as the tactical optics, which are, you know, 40 plus ounces. So again, these are like 28 to 30, good weight, but still have the Night Force durability, and, you know, they make great products. A lot of companies make good scopes, but Night Force makes a really great product. They have two scopes that we recommend in the NX8 line. This happens to be the 4-32 50, and then they also make a 2.5 to 20, which I think would be more appropriate if you think you might find yourself hunting in the timber. That 2.5 to 20 would probably be better. You know, and I really don't think you need 32 power on the high end for a hunting optic. I think that's overkill. But some guys want more than 20. Personally, I really don't think you need more than 20. You know, a lot of guys, they'll have a tendency to overscope stuff without having substantial experience to know what they actually need. They think, okay, if I'm going to shoot long range, I might have to shoot up to 600 yards, or, you know, whatever the number is. I need 32 power. Well, one time I shot an elk at 580 yards, you know, so basically almost 600 yards. I shot it on 7 power. You know, I had 20 power with me, but when I pulled the trigger, it was on 7 power. And with that same rifle and that same scope, I shot a steel target at 2,100 yards on 20 power. So, do you need more than 20 power? Probably not. But some guys want it, you know, whether it be for identifying the target or counting points, or, you know, counting antlers, or, you know, whatever. Like, if you want the extra power, great. But again, they make two that we recommend. This is the 4-32, and then the 2.5 to 20 is a great option also. I think that one's 28 ounces, and this 4-32 is 30 ounces. You can't really see it. Let's see if we can on some other pictures. Yeah, you can a little bit. I have the a Vortex level on there. Night Force does make a ring cap that has a level built into it that you can basically replace the rear cap's top half of the ring, and that has a level in it. But I've found that personally that's a little bit hard to see. So you know, and even Vortex, they make a low profile bubble level that isn't as big as the standard Vortex bubble level. But again, I find it's hard to see, like, because if it's low profile, you can't put it on the back side of the parallax. You have to put it on the front side. So now it's in the way of your parallax, and it's closer to your eye. So like trying to get your eye to focus on it is difficult, I found. So I like having it on the back side of the erector assembly and on the back side of the parallax. And this standard Vortex bubble level, the frame of it is big enough that it pushes the bubble level out far enough that you can see in this picture it's just barely above the parallax. So it's like in a perfect place, and it's far enough away from your eye that you can easily focus on it. You know, if you're looking through the scope with your right eye, I happen to shoot with my left eye closed. I have to, because I'm left eye dominant and right-handed, unfortunately. So I have to close my left eye in order to be able to see through the scope. But if I open my left eye, the level's far enough away that I can see it without having to squint or do anything weird or move my head or pull back or anything. I can just open my eye and see it, and then close my eye again and take the shot. So that's why I picked that. level. So we talked about scope, level, rings, action, bottom metal, trigger, stock. What's left? Barrel and the brake. So the barrel is a Proof Sendero. Proof has really groomed their offerings lately. I think they just had too many SKUs and they had a hell of a time keeping up with all of them. So like they used to offer 28 and 30 inch barrels in some calibers. They don't offer that anymore. Their Sendero Light, which is their smaller diameter barrel, I think it finishes at like 820 or 830, which is kind of like a Remington Sendero or a Remington Varmint contour size. They really reduced those offerings, so a lot of times the Sendero Light you can only get in short barrels. Like they don't make 26s anymore. They used to. And this is a Proof Sendero, the full Sendero, where it finishes at .930 at the muzzle. And they used to make those in 28s and some 30s. They don't anymore. They only make 26s, which is fine. I think 26 is a good length. Personally, I prefer longer, but 26 is kind of a compromise for me. But, it's still a good length. It allows you to ring most of what you need to out of most cartridges, and it's a length that's kind of been the industry standard for magnums, that 26-inch length. So that's why we went with that, and that's an 8 twist, again, Sendero profile. So I think 8 twist is the tightest they sell, which is adequate for these big 160 grain CX bullets and the heavier, 175 ELDXs, the 180 ELDMs, and on. You could even shoot their 190 grain A-tip. I think the twist is kind of marginal. Well, I wouldn't say marginal. It's adequate, but I'd like to see it tighter if you're going to shoot something that big. And then the brake we chose is made by Muzzle Brakes and More. This happens to be stainless. If you went with titanium, you'd save about 1.5 ounces, but it's almost double the price. So you got to decide if that's worth it for you. This is the Beast, or CF Beast, meaning carbon fiber. It's the same diameter as the carbon fiber barrel. So it's a CF Beast 2, meaning 2-piece. So it's self-timing. This happens to be a 4-port. They make 3, 4, and 5-port. And stainless. I think he makes them all in titanium too. I know he makes the 4 and 5 in titanium, but he might make a 3-port out as well. The 3-port would make it a little shorter. It'd reduce the recoil a little bit less and save a tiny bit of weight. So, if this is a 7 PRC, anywhere from, because it's 930 in diameter, it's a big break, so you get a lot of recoil reduction. And I think the 3, 4, or 5-port would be adequate for a 7 PRC, or even the 28 Nosler. Obviously, the more ports you have, the more recoil it reduces. But if you want it to be a little shorter and you don't like the look of a 4 or 5-port, if you wanted a 3-port, that would be fine as well. We just happened to choose a 4-port for this one. Again, if you went with titanium, it'd be a little bit lighter. Why MBM? Well, there's a lot of different brake manufacturers out there. I feel like Nathan's are the best value. Nathan Wright is the name of the guy that owns the company, but Muzzle Brakes and More. I feel like his are the best value for what he offers, and I haven't seen a brake that reduces recoil as much as these. The only one that's close that I've seen are the Terminators, and they're phenomenal brakes too. I happen to have some. But the Terminators, the stainless Terminators, are the same price as the titanium MBMs. So, if you're gonna go with stainless, by choosing a stainless MBM versus a Terminator, you're gonna save about $100, and the recoil reduction is even a little bit better, or the same or better as a Terminator. So, value. And he makes a lot of different sizes, and just the options that he has are second to none, in my opinion. So that's why. I have MBMs, I have Terminators. They both work great. The MBMs are just a little bit less expensive, and he's got a titanium offering and a lot of different options, and on and on. So that's it. Soup to nuts. This model of what I didn't mention, this model of stock does not have. You see on the butt stock, it has QD connections. I'm going to go back through the pictures here. So it's got little QD spots for your sling. You see right here. This model of stock does not have room to put them on the fore end, but this piece of Picatinny rail that we have on the bottom that allows you to interface it with our tripod, there's a QD sling mount right here on that piece of pick rail. So you can hook it to the bottom center and then hook it to either side on the buttstock. There's a QD on both sides. So that's what we recommend. Again, they make, AG makes a bunch of different stock models. The other ones that I like are the, well, they have a bunch of different good ones. The K2 is good. The Armor's good. They have another one, I think it's called the Alpine, that's good, where the bottom of the buttstock is reasonably flat or has a very slight angle to it, so the gun tracks straight. I don't want to see a super steep, sporter type stock on the Colm. Some guys can shoot them really well, but trying to control them during recoil is really difficult. So, and I think this chalk branch looks the best of all the models they sell. So I think that's it for the details about the rifle. Now I don't know how long that took. Now we can go into how the sweet spot's shot. Again, I'm gonna do a video just like this for all the different rifles, so you guys can see the specs of the build, talk a little bit about each one and how they differ from each other, and then go into how they shot. So that's it for that. Now we can go into the sweet spot. So just as a reminder, this test that we did, now we'll go into what we're seeing in the comments. So the only real pushback I'm getting on this test, I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from a lot of you. Some of you guys, as soon as I showed you this test, a lot of guys are jumping into it head first, and they're applying it to their testing and going out and trying loads, and I'm getting a lot of good positive feedback from you guys. It's some of you guys are saying that this is the best load development method you've ever seen, and that it's working for a lot of you right off the bat. So that's great. I'm happy to hear that. But the pushback I'm getting is guys that, I don't want to say are drinking the Hornady Kool-Aid, but that's probably what I should say. You guys have watched these videos, it seems like I'm talking shit about Hornady, and I kind of am, but I'm kind of not. Like, they do so much good stuff for our industry, but they're bold, and that's why they're at the top of the heap for bullet manufacturers and why they sell the most bullets and whatever. Like, they're bold. They're not afraid to do shit that nobody else is doing. And we're kind of like that too. So, I appreciate what they do. But it paints a bullseye on their back a lot. So, like, a lot of people, it seems like there's people that love Hornady and drink the Kool-Aid no matter what they're putting out. And then there's people that talk shit about Hornady no matter what they're doing. And then there's people that are kind of in the middle. I guess I'm kind of in the middle, where I think they do a lot of good stuff, but they do some stuff that puts a bullseye on their back. But they're bold, which I appreciate. They're pushing the envelope and they're trying new stuff, and that's what I'm doing with this test. Like, so the pushback I'm getting in the comments are from guys that are like, oh, well, as a reminder, if this is your first encounter with our series, go back and start from the beginning, watch them all, watch all the videos. But as a reminder, what we're doing is we're taking a powder, loading up one charge weight, or 10 different charge weights, one shot of each only, and then shooting them at the same spot to get an aggregate of 10 different charge weights, an aggregate group size, and then where sequential shots hit in the same place or we're close, we're then testing in between those two charge weights to see if we're onto something. I said right away, like, this is exploratory testing. It's not statistically relevant. It's not definitive. We're exploring. We're looking for where to look. You know, if you just start in a reloading manual, you're basically grunting and pointing like, oh, I'm going to try this. Well, you're throwing darts in the dark. When you take a load out of a manual, it's literally darts in the dark. You don't know where to look. You're just trying what's in the book and hoping for the best. Well, that doesn't work worth a shit most of the time. Sometimes you get lucky. But the reason load development videos are so popular, like they're the most contentious and most popular thing online. Like if you want to get a bunch of views, make a load development video. Why? Because it's the most frustrating, difficult, whatever, like contentious part of hand loading. There's no perfect method. There's no exact science. There's nothing that's 100% repeatable. You know, if you know jack shit about statistics, you know that the way groups hit on target is a bell curve. What does that mean? A lot of guys, you start talking about this, their eyes glaze over and they don't know what the hell you're talking about. You know, if you've seen a bell curve, what it means is that 66% of the time, so the biggest majority of the time in the middle of the bell curve, 66% of the time is what's going to happen the most. Meaning 66% of the time, let's say you have a gun that 66% of the time shoots a half inch. Well, most of the time it's going to shoot around a half inch. But that also means that 33% of the time it's going to be bigger than that, and 33, or not 33. What's the difference here? 33 divided by 2. Sorry, guys. 34 divided by 2. That means 17% of the time it's going to shoot bigger than a half, and 17% it's going to shoot smaller than a half. It's not always going to shoot a half. That's not how this shit works. Like, you can't say, this is something that I'm getting off track here, but this is something that drives me fucking berserk online, where guys are like, oh, well, that gun will shoot quarter inch groups all day long. Bullshit. That's not reality. It's impossible. It's physically impossible. You can't defy physics, and neither can whatever frickin' gun you're shooting. So that's not possible. So like when we go through these groups, you know, you're going to see I don't get too stirred up about the group, whether it's big or small, because it's a sample of one. Like, and no matter what it shoots, it ain't going to do that all the time. You know, and the guys that think that it will, your ignorance is showing and your inexperience is showing. Guns don't shoot the same all the time. Period. They don't always shoot big. They don't always shoot small. You know, it's a bell curve. So that, oh God, I'm getting off track here, but that comment drives me nuts when I see you say it'll do this all day long. The first thing I think is you don't know shit. You don't know what you're talking about, and you haven't shot enough to know better. You're trying to puff up yourself on the internet and look like some expert. And for those of us that really know how this stuff works, you look like an idiot. So please stop doing that. Anyway, so groups differ. You know, you take something out and shoot it. On average, it's going to shoot about whatever. And I found over time that part of what we're looking for in this test, like I mentioned in the last video, is consistent point of impact, relative point of impact to your point of aim. So it doesn't matter if you have a perfect zero. Wherever you're aiming, you shoot. The groups, let's say the group forms up here, high and left. You know, half inch high, half inch left. What we want is the next time you take it out, it's also half and left, half high, half left. And the next time, same. Next time, same. Next time, same. We want every time you take it out, it hits in the same place relative to your point of aim. Let's say you have a good zero, you know, and it's right on. Well, the groups are going to be different. So every time you go out, like this is what Hornady talks about, why they say you need bigger sample sizes, because a 3-shot group, it is pretty meaningless. You know, you have to go out and repeat that many times in order to know what the gun's really going to do. So that's why I don't get super stirred up about that. Like, it's nice to shoot a 3-shot group, makes you feel good, but I care more about every time I take it out, it hits in the same place. You know, the group's going to be a different size every time, but it hits in the same place, because then I start to trust it and I can count it as reliable. And we'll show, like with the factory ammo, you don't get that usually. Sometimes you do, but you'll see when we go into how the factory ammo shot, the CX and the 175 ELDX, you don't get that as often because they're coming up with that in their test barrel. Well, that doesn't have anything to do with your gun. You know, their test barrel is their test barrel. That doesn't have anything to do with a lightweight or medium weight long range hunting rifle, and it doesn't have anything to do with your gun. So they're trying to find something that's decent, you know. Where this test that I came up with, we're looking for what's consistent in your gun. That's why I said I'm not going to share charge weights and cartridge overall lengths and whatever, because what I find doesn't matter, because it's relevant to this gun and guns that are built like this with these parts and this barrel length and on and on. Like, so we're looking for something that consistently hits in the same place. We're not looking for anything else, really. So like I said, that was a tangent, I'm sorry. But you guys know I'm passionate about this stuff, and I see stuff online and it just drives me nuts. We're looking for consistency, a relative point of impact consistency. We're not looking for the fastest load. We're not looking for whatever other metric you want to talk about. That's why we're looking for sequential charge weights that hit in the same place and relatively in the center of the ag, because we want something that when you take it out from time to time, it hits in the same place. The groups are going to be different. If you've shot for any length of time, you better know that you can take the same load out many times, and the groups are going to be a different size every time you go out. Sometimes they'll be the same, maybe 2 trips in a row, and the third time you go out, it shoots big. That doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater and get rid of that load. You know, it just, you had a bad day, you know, whatever. It was on a different end of the bell curve that day, or you pulled a shot or whatever. Like, don't get stirred up into that. Don't get sucked into that where you have one bad group and you're like, oh, well, this load's no good. Doesn't mean anything. What you want is, when you take it out from time to time, it hits in the same place. So let's go into this. Let's start with the factory Hornady Outfitter 160 grain CX. So we'll look at the 2 different factory ammos, so we kind of get a baseline, and then we'll go into the sweet spots and see how they did by comparison. So to get a decent aggregate for the factory ammo, I shot a 3-shot group 3 times. So we'll look at each one individually, and then I think I wrote down the averages too, so we have an idea of how they're shooting. So the first one, go into our slides here. So the first one, Hornady Outfitter 160 grain CX, Group 1, 30-52 average. So we'll look at these averages, but you know, the box said 3,000 feet a second, and if you listen to the internet tells you that, you know, and that 3,000 feet a second, that's for a 24-inch barrel. This is a 26. Well, if you listen to the internet, on average, the internet tells you on average, I don't, but the internet does, that each inch is worth about 25 feet a second. Well, this matches that perfectly. You know, it's 2 inches longer than what they tested with, and it's 50 feet a second faster. Well, look at that. So for this stuff, this factory ammo, their box velocity, I would say, is right on. And you see it shot a pretty decent group here, but pay attention to the relative location of the group. So if we look at this group, you know, the center of these 3 shots is what, probably right here. So it's just left to center, you know, just left of the center of the dot, and whatever that is, 1.25 inches high, whatever. So about right there. 30-52 average, standard deviation 3.3, extreme spread of 7. and I shot an 8.16 group. Pretty damn good for factory ammo, if you ask me. I mean, the SD and the ES, that's damn good for hand loads. And the 8.16 group, pretty decent. Again, don't get tied up in one group. Next group, 3085, quite a bit faster. And this group, and I think the next one, yeah, these next two groups were shot later in the barrel's life, after it had more rounds on it, and after I had cleaned it. I should go into this in a different video, but after the barrel was broke in, we don't break in barrels, by the way. You guys probably saw that, and if you watch my 22 Nosser series, you know that, but we don't break in barrels. Personally, I think the barrel break-in process is bullshit. You can't prove to me that it does anything to make the gun shoot better or worse. I think the reason barrel manufacturers have a break-in process is the barrel does change in the first 20 rounds. I mean, it changes in the first 200 rounds, but it changes the most in the first 20 rounds, where from where the chamber was cut to the lands and groove, that little transition there is super sharp after the barrel is chambered, and that needs to kind of get rounded off and blasted and kind of burnished a little bit. So the barrel does change a lot in the first 20 rounds, where say the first 2 or 3 shots might be super erratic, and then after that it kind of calms down, where what I found is the first 20 rounds of a barrel's life, if you just go out, let's say you take 2 or 3 shots to zero it, and then you start shooting groups. Well, as you start shooting groups, they'll migrate and they'll wander around. Like one group will be here and the next group will be there and there and there, and after about 20 it kind of calms down and settles down into a general area, 20 shots. But we don't do any cleaning in between there. Like, we machine the barrel, we clean it thoroughly after it's machined, and then we go out and shoot it. And I think the break-in process that barrel companies recommend is to get you to slow down, so you don't go out and bang away and get the thing red hot in those first 20 rounds of the barrel's life when it's at its most sensitive. But other than that, other than getting you to slow down, I don't think it does a damn thing. So we don't do any special break-in process. We take the gun out and shoot it. So I think I had almost 100 rounds down this barrel before I ran a patch down it. And then when I did clean it, I scrubbed the hell out of it. So I used brushes and patches and thoroughly cleaned it. So then after that, I went out and shot it again and gathered some more data. So from this first group to these subsequent groups, this first group was early on in the barrel's life, 30-52 average, and then the next two were shot on the same day. I shot them the other day, and it was later in the barrel's life, so they're faster. You know, that's a contentious topic too. Do barrels speed up? In my experience, they do. I think it depends on the cartridge and how you clean it and whether or not you use abrasives and like on and on and on. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but the way I don't use abrasives. The way I clean barrels, I don't think I'm removing enough material to keep the velocity consistent. So I think the barrel, as the barrel starts to fire crack and that sort of thing, and it breaks in, there's more resistance. So given ammunition will, because there's more resistance, that increases the pressure and it makes velocity go up. It's not rocket science. So I think that's what's happening, and why barrels speed up is there's damage in the barrel that creates more drag, and that increases the pressure and therefore the velocity. I don't think it's any more complicated than that. And if you use abrasives like IOSO or JB bore paste or things like that, you're removing some of that microscopic fissuring and cracking and stuff like that. You're removing some material and smoothing out and polishing the inside of the barrel. which creates less drag, and therefore the barrel doesn't speed up. But for the way I clean, for me, they speed up. And it doesn't matter the cartridge, it doesn't matter whatever. My wife's walking by, she's trying to stay out of the camera. So the second one, we have 3085 average. I keep going off on these tangents, guys, but I'm trying to explain what I'm seeing and throw some nuggets in here while we're going along, and just so you guys understand the way I look at things. 3085 SD 10.3, extreme spread 25, and a shot of 1.407. So you see, same ammo, different times in the barrel's life, different weather conditions. And I think I adjusted the scope too. So the relative point of impact between this one and this one doesn't mean anything, but between this one and the next one it does, because these were shot on the same day without adjusting the scope. So 1.407. Not great. Third group, 3062. So that dropped down a little bit closer to the original velocity. Standard deviation 3.7, extreme spread of 9. Great. Good stuff. Same size group, 1.441. Last one was 1.407. But look at the relative location. So if the average location is probably about right here, so like whatever, a quarter inch to the 1 or 2 o'clock, this next one, the average point of location is about a quarter to 10:30, 11 o'clock. So the average impact location is in a different place. That's not what we want. That's going to give you trouble, because not only is it almost 1.5 inch group, but it's hitting in a different place. So now, like, that's probably that point of impact location. If it was over here, the average, and now the average is over here, well, it's going from one side of the dot to the other. So that's a 1/2 inch dot, or about a half minute. So not only is the group 1.5 MOA almost, it's migrating a 1/2 MOA from side to side. So, you know, when you take that out to distance, that's going to move, you know, an additional half minute. So if we're talking 600 yards, it's going to move 3.5 inches without you doing anything, without you changing anything. That's not wind, that's not anything else. That's just from one 3-shot string to the next, it's moving 3 inches. The whole group, it's moving the whole group 3.5 inches. So you see, like, these things start to compound. So to me, it's not so important, did it shoot 1.5 minutes or a minute or 1.25 minutes or whatever. It's more important, like, does it hit in the same place? So that the 3 groups, the average was 3068 feet a second, standard deviation 15.5. This is for all 9 shots. 3068 average, SD 15.5, extreme spread 47. So 9-shot sample, ES up around 50. Typical factory ammo stuff. And then the average group size was 1.224 inches, which is 1.17 MOA. Not terrible, not great. Kind of mediocre. Next, we have the fabled 175 grain ELDX Hornady Precision Hunter ammo. Shot really good. And I think, God, my gut's telling me this is the old original inventory, because we ordered it as soon as it was available and didn't keep track of, you know, what we ordered first versus what we ordered later, because this was, you know, we had already ordered it multiple times before we knew there was a velocity, whatever you want to call it, saga. So let's look at this. So first group, 3019 average, standard deviation 5.9, extreme spread of 14, and shot of 655. Very, very good for hand loads or factory, you know, for a hunting gun. That's really good. It's not match level stuff, but these aren't match guns. Relative point of impact, just below center line of the dot, and probably about right here, maybe inch and a half to the right. Next one, relative point of impact, quite a bit closer to the dot and higher, so I'd say probably about right here. So not far from where the relative point of impact was on the last one, but a little different. 30-12 average, standard deviation 10.7, extreme spread of 24, and shot a 971. Still really good for a hunting gun. Third group. This average was a little lower and a little closer yet to the dot, so getting some migration from group to group on the relative point of impact, but not terrible, but some. 3002 average, standard deviation was a bit higher on this one, 17, extreme spread 37, but still shot a 716 group. Really good. There was one shot that's really screwed up the extreme spread, and it was the first shot of this group. And I don't know if it was the lower one or one of the other two, I don't know, but it was 29.89, and that screwed up the extreme spread quite a bit, the aggregate extreme spread, not only for this group but for the 9-shot ag. So the 9-shot ag for the Hornady Precision Hunter 175 ELDX was really good. 3011 average, 13.9 SD, 37 ES, and the average group size was 0.781. Really good. But that's again, that extreme spread was only as high as 37, which isn't bad. It only went up to 37 because this last group had one shot that was abnormally slow compared to the others. I think it was 8 feet a second slower than the next slowest shot, so that's kind of abnormal. All right, so now we have a baseline. Again, this averaged 781 group size, which is 0.75 MOA. By the time you figure that out in MOA, it's 3/4 MOA. That's damn good factory ammo. And then Outfitter CX averaged 1.17 MOA, so about 1 1/8, just over MOA. How did the sweet spots do? Remember, we had some that we were looking at for each powder for this gun. We had, go back to the original testing here. So for 7828 Super Shortcut, we had 4 of them that we were going to explore. And then N560, we only had 1. And 4831 Shortcut, we had 3. Let's see how we did. 4831 Shortcut. This was the slowest of the 3. So that averaged 2950, which was down around where the max velocity of the 280 was. So if that bothers you, that it's a bigger cartridge and it's shooting well down around the 280 velocities. Personally, that wouldn't bother me that much, but some guys would lose their marbles over that. And this load I'm going to explore a little further, despite the fact that it's slow. 2950 average, look at that standard deviation, 2.2 extreme spread of 5. And it shot a 692 group. And keep in mind, all these sweet spots, everything's the same seating depth. So there's no seating depth manipulation at all. I just picked the starting seating depth, and that's what I'm running with for all of them. So, and you guys, if you watch my 22 Nostler series, you know this, but I throw charge weights with I have a big convoluted scale. Some of you guys have probably seen it, but it's an A&D FX120i with the McDonald Innovations Auto Trickler V4. What does that mean in English? It means that it throws charges, it weighs each charge one at a time, and it throws them really fast, and it's accurate, like to the kernel of powder. So it's as accurate as you can get without taking a razor blade and cutting kernels in half. So in my experience, that goes a long way to getting a good SD and ES. I mentioned this before, but one thing is brass prep, really consistent brass prep and sizing, and then really consistent powder charges. In my opinion, that gets you most of the way to good SD and good ES, and then also finding a bullet and powder combination that the gun likes. Picking flat spots, in my experience, that has less to do with it than the other things I just mentioned, I guess is the best way to say it. So that one, really good. On the slow side, but a lot of guys would be happy with these metrics, especially considering I did a 10-shot test, picked a spot, went to the range, shot 3 shots, 2.2, 5, and 692. A lot of guys will spend, I don't know how many trips to the range and shoot countless rounds and not get anywhere close to that. So 13 shots of load development. Ta-da! All right, next one. It was a little bit bigger, and this one, my orange dot delaminated from the cardboard and fell off at some point. I don't know when. At some point between when I shot it and when I took this picture. So second sweet spot, 30-29 average, SD 3.4, extreme spread of 8, and shot a 1.045. Not great, not terrible. It's not happy about something. 2 shots are close together, and then it threw the third one. Next one, third sweet spot, 30-61 average. Oh, and if you remember, I was kind of thinking that we would find something around that 3,000 foot a second sweet spot, where all 3 powders seem to shoot around that 3,000, 3,010-ish neighborhood. Well, this kind of went around it. 2950, 30-29, and this didn't shoot that great. So I did subsequently do some exploring and tested slightly lower charge weights just to try to relocate that 3,000-ish foot per second sweet spot and see if when we got around that velocity, if it shot well. And that'll be in the next video that we do on the 7 PRC. So we kind of went around that 3,000 feet a second with this testing. And that can happen. Like when you do that 10-shot initial ladder test, 1 shot is not a lot of data. It's almost no data. You know, like I said, it's exploratory. So you can't take anything you find in there to the bank. You're using your depth finder trying to find where the fish are. We're not talking lures, we're not talking strategy, we're not talking anything. We're pinging with the depth finder trying to find where to look. So take it with a grain of salt. So what I thought was going to be the charge weight we needed to test to be around 3,000 feet a second, it was a little off. You know, the ones we found were a little off. So we had to explore a little further to try to relocate it. Did I have to do that? No. Did I want to do that? Yes. Next one. Third sweet spot. 30-60. This was the fastest one. 30-61. Still good SD, 7, ES 17. Getting up near max pressure. That might be why the extreme spread was higher. I don't know. And then the group shot 631. Very respectable. 2 shots overlapping and through the other one. So this one, I'm curious, relative point of impact. This one, again, I don't know because we lost the dot, but this one, it's hitting in a different place. So that's hitting to the 10 o'clock location, and this one's more like straight noon, 11:30. What's next? N560. Remember, this one only had 1 sweet spot. It was in that 3,005 or better velocity neighborhood, and that's where it landed. The charge weight I picked shot a 30-15 average, SD of 6.6, extreme spread of 16, shot a 373 group. Probably worth testing it again. Shot damn good. Next one. IMR 7828 Super Shortcut. Sweet spot number 1. This was the slower one. If you look at this, so this is something interesting here. 29.43 average. Well, if we go back to the slower 48.31, I'll pull them both up, I guess. Let's see, where's the slower 78.28? So put that over here. And put this. Don't need that up twice. This over here. Okay, so look at this. These are the slower sweet spots for 78.28 and 48.31. 29.43, 29.50. SD 4.3, 2.2, extreme spread of 10, extreme spread of 5. This shot of 468, this shot of 692, and look at where their average point of impact location is. Very close to each other. Probably worth looking into those, even though they're slower. Like I said, the velocity is down around the top of the 280, but look at these metrics. I mean, the velocity numbers, the standard deviation, extreme spread are crazy, and the groups are decent too. So again, this no seating depth testing, no nothing. Just I picked a seating depth, shot it. Here's how we panned out. So worth looking into those. We're on 78.28, so again, that one shot really well. Number 2, look at that group. 29.93 in that 3,000, like I said, that 3,000-ish neighborhood that we were looking for. 29.93, standard deviation of 2, extreme spread of 5, and a shot of 174. A lot of guys, again, did a 10-shot test, picked sweet spots, went out and shot them, shot a 468, and then a 174. So whatever that is, 16 rounds of load development. We got 2 groups under half an inch. A lot of guys had bronze the gun and retire at that point. But again, let's not get too stirred up over one group. But that was a nice surprise to see. Shoot a 174. So we're going to pursue that further. And then the third one, excuse me, got up around the top, or got up around peak pressure. Remember, I think we pressured out around like 30, 50, somewhere in there. So this one, the average was 30.31, standard deviation 4.6, extreme spread of 11, still great metrics. Was shot at 981, so too tight, and then it threw one. And that I've noticed that can happen sometimes once you start getting up around the peak pressure. You're kind of on the ragged edge where it kind of wants to shoot, but it can do stuff like this where it'll just throw one now and then. And I think that's the last one. So what we decided to do after this, this video is going to be a little bit shorter just because of this. This is all the farther I'm going with this one, where review the rifle, review the sweet spots, and then show you what we decided to test further. So this one we left alone, 30.53 average, 5.4 SD, ES of 13, and a 1.187 group. Just as we got higher in the charge weights, started spraying them. And then same with this last one. So these last 2, as we got closer to max pressure, it just got unhappy. So we're not going to pursue those any further. Get back down around this 3,000 foot per second mark, the 29.93 sweet spot number 2. Obviously we're going to test that further. Sweet spot number 1, we'll test that again, see how that holds together. Relative to each other, you see they're kind of in a similar area. This one's kind of at 11 o'clock, but a little farther from the dot. This one's closer to the dot and more like 10:30. So we're going to test those further. And 560 sweet spot number 1, obviously we're going to test that further. Same thing, kind of in that 10:30, 11 o'clock neighborhood. This one was the farthest away from the point of aim. And then 4831. That one shot okay, but it's up near the top, and I don't think we're going to pursue that. This one, again, kind of in a no man's land. It's a little bit, metrics are decent, group size is okay, but it's a little bit higher than where I thought we would be. So I did some exploratory testing trying to locate that 3,000-ish foot per second. We'll go into that in the next one, next 7PRC video. And then this load, we're going to test again because those velocity metrics are bonkers, and the group's good too, where we have two that are overlapping and then one kind of jumped out a little bit, but still, again, in that kind of 10:30 location. So you see, like, all of these that wanted to shoot and that shot well are all in the same general area. That's what we're looking for. We want that consistency. And then we'll go out and test them further and shoot them again and again and again to make sure that that holds true. Not only that the groups, you know, don't completely go to hell, but that the relative point of impact is consistent, and also consistent relative to each other, to see if there's, you know, because when we shoot them all on the same day, we can get an idea of if one's migrating and if one's moving and doing weird stuff. Because when you shoot these subsequent times, I guess now that we know what we're going to test further, we can get off the screen recording here and I can just talk to you guys and put a bow on this. So when we go out and test these loads further, what I mean is we'll go out and shoot the same thing again. So if I'm not exploring, like with 4831, I'm going to look for that 3,000-ish feet a second. Well, these other ones, that, you know, the N560 and the 7828 that are driving tacks, and then the slower 7820 and the slower 4831, I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to go out and shoot them again and see. You know, I got to start to build trust with the load. This is the way I look at it, is you start with your 10-shot aggregate ladder test, basically pinging away with the sonar, pinging away with the depth finder, trying to know where to look, where the fish are. And then we start dropping lures in the water. You know, we start, okay, let's try this, and see what we get. And if we get something that looks promising, we get a bite, we try it again. You know, if you get a bite on a lure, you don't start changing the damn lure. You put the sumbitch in the water again and you see if you get another bite. Well, that's what we're doing. You know, if you get a bite, that's a perfect analogy. If you're out fishing, you get a bite, you don't change the damn lure. You try it again and see if that's the ticket. So that's what we're doing. So we'll go out and test these again, other than the one we're going to look for, and start to build trust. Start to figure out if this is something we can count on. And we're not looking for, you know, I'm not going to say that because that 7828 group that shot a 174, that's not automatically the best load. Just because it shot smaller than everything else. It shot half the size of the N560 and shot better than the 4831 and put the factory ammo to shame. Like, that doesn't mean that we just all aboard that load and piss on everything else. That's one group, you know. Doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's nice to see, but we got to go out and shoot again and start to get more data and start to get to where we can trust these things and they can be reliable. And I want to have that trust and that reliability with something before I take the time and resources to go out and shoot it at long range. I'm not going to go based off of one group. That's foolish. I mean, you can get lucky, but I want more information before I go out and test it further. So what can you look forward to coming up here? I'm going to try to bang out these kind of rifle showcase videos where I show you the rifle, tell you everything about it, and then show you the sweet spots. This is 7PRC, I think. Next, I'm going to do the 7 Rem Mag, I think. And then probably the 280, and then probably the 28 Nosler last. Do the same style video and try to crank them out as quick as I can here. And then after that, we'll do the same thing. Do a 7PRC video, a 7 Rem Mag video, a 280 and a 28 Nosler, where I show you the further testing, where we went out and shot these same sweet spots again, and whatever other exploratory subsequent testing we did, and where we landed, with that, and then therefore what we want to take out and test at long range. So that's what you have to look forward to. It'll be 3 more rifle videos and then 4 more videos of subsequent testing. Those will probably be shorter because we're just going into, looking at some more groups. And then after that, time to heave them downrange and see how they do, and see if it suits our needs, if any of the loads suit our needs, or if we feel like we need to do any further exploration or seating depth, muckery, or any of that other stuff. So thank you guys again. Thanks for watching. Appreciate your support and following along in the series. Tell your friends if you haven't already. I'm guessing most you have, but like, subscribe, share with your friends, all that good stuff, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.